Hey everyone, Imran Bukhari is here. In today's tutorial, I'm gonna explain a very fundamental concept while learning DAX. So if you are new to learning DAX and if you are not familiar with this context, the chances are higher that you will not be able to write good DAX. Even you are not even able to understand how DAX is working. So every DAX formula is evaluated under these two contexts, and these contexts are named as filter context and the row context. And the pattern of my demo is, first I will talk about filter context, then I will explain what row context is, and at the end of this demo I will also explain what is the context transition. And I'm not going to use any PowerPoint slides. I will prefer to use live demo on my Power BI desktop. Let me just give you a quick overview of my data model. So I have got a sales data table, and it is surrounded with my dimension tables of calendar, channel, and product. Okay, so I'm gonna start from the filter context first. As you can see from my sales data, if I just give you a look on my sales data, I have got the sales data where I have the unit price and quantity, and then from the M language, from Power Query, I have calculated this column value. It is, and later in my tutorial I will also create this column using DAX. Now in my filter context demo, let's create a sum of the value. So if I create a new measure in my facts table, like new measure, and I call this measure as total sales value, which is equal to the sum of value in my sales data. Okay, fine. And let me just place the result in a card visual just to give you an idea what this measure has done, what it has calculated. It is giving me an amount of 465 millions, and I'm also going to change the display units to none so I can see the whole number. Yes. So what this sum function does, so what this measure is doing, it's actually, as there is no filter context, there is no filter, so it is adding all the values in the values column. Let me show you how the filter context work. If I take channel name and then I put this total sales value measure here, yes, now you can see that this measure is giving me, this 465 million is giving me different number in every row. Why is that? So the actual reason is that this measure is being recalculated, is being re-evaluated every time when it actually takes the its coordinates. Actually, what happens behind the scene? A measure is recalculated it based on its coordinates, based on the page filters, based on slicers. So it's not, the filter context is not something that user defines. It happens, it occurs automatically. If I place two slicers here, let me just add a slicer of the brand name, and then I'm gonna add another slicer of my like the class name. Okay, things get interesting even further. If I select Contoso, now you can see that every value in front of every channel name is recalculated. If I select another measure, now what's happening? What's happening is that it is filtering the sales data based on my slicer selection and based on the row headers of the table. So this 308 is actually the total of when the brand name equals Contoso, where the class name equals Deluxe, and the channel name is equal to Catalog. And at the end of the table, you can see that it is giving me the grand total, which is matching this 3.5 million. The reason is because at this total level there is no filter context. That is why when there is no filter context, it is giving me the grand total. And same is the case with this value, as there is no Well, there is a filter context based on these two slicers, but as there is nothing in the left side in the row headers, so that is why this grand total and this cart measure is giving me the same numbers. There is a function in calculate in DAX which is named as calculate, and calculate has the ability to change the filter context. So as I said before, that filter context is not something that user actually creates. It happens automatically. But using calculate, you can change the filter context, and you can create your own. You can modify the filter context, and I'll talk about the calculate function later on. Actually, the calculate function is not in the scope of this video, but I will talk about it later on. Okay, so now let's move on to the row context. What row context is? If I go to my sales data table, here you can see that I have a value column, and this value column, as I mentioned before, is calculated in M, and I have what I have done is I have multiplied quantity with the unit price, and to come up this column. If I create a new column here, and by the way, whenever you are creating a column, a calculated column, there is row context. Let me first calculate the total value using DAX. In DAX equals like the quantity times unit price, and both the columns are in my sales data table, so so the DAX is automatically taking my table name along with the column names. That is actually called the fully qualified column name. Okay, fine. I just convert it to a whole number. Now you can see that the result of both the calculations, the result is the same. So what is happening? Because the row context, what row context does, it takes each and every row as an individual row, and then it performs that calculation row by row by row by row. So it is taking the number from the quantity column, multiplying it with the unit price, and then calculating, then performing this calculation. So and let me show you a difference here. If I try to do the same calculation in a measure, I go back to my main and if I try to do a measure like total V equals, first you are observing that there is red highlighted lines, and it will give me an error because the reason behind, in calculated column there is a row context. It understands what is in that single row, but when you try to do the same calculation in a measure, there is no row context. A measure cannot understand the row context. There are different functions in DAX, like the one I am using now. So there are iterator functions in DAX that actually are able to create that row context. So if I use the SUMX over sales data, and then I perform the same calculation, now you will be able to see the result as well, and then now there is no like error. And if I place the same number, same calculation, total V, it is the same. It is the same that we have done before using simple sum function. So 3.85 million. It is the same. So this was about all about the row context. And the difference between a row context and the filter context is, in row context, most of the time you create calculated columns, and yes, you can use that row context using DAX measures, but then you will have to use those particular DAX functions that can iterate row by row and row by row. And the most common one is the SUMX and the averageX, and then there is a filter function and all functions. So there are so many other functions that can replicate the same concept, but you cannot do the syntax that I have used for creating a calculated column. You cannot straight away put that one into a measure. So now is the time to talk about the context transition. As I have mentioned in my in start of my tutorial, I'll also talk about context transition. So context transition is actually takes the row context and it converts it, transforms it into an equivalent of filter context. Well, maybe it might be difficult to understand by just its definition. Let's jump on to the live demo. I have got my products table. Okay, I have got my product key and there is a relationship. Just in my product table have a relationship based on the product key with my sales data table. Now my requirement is actually to create ranking of each product. So I have to I need to have a calculated column here which adds up all the sales based on that product key. So if I create a column here and if I use like total value, like I'm using this TT just to differentiate it, and if I use sum of the value from my sales data table, a strange thing will happen. Okay, the strange thing is that you are observing same value 465 million in every row, in every cell, in every row, and it is being repeated every time. Actually the reason behind is that I am computing this total value based in the row context, and the row context does not propagate through the table relationships. So there is no way for this formula to to filter the sales data depending on based on my this sum of sales data value. What I will have to do is to change it with the help of a calculate function. And when I will first let me show you the result and then I will explain it. Now you can see, and now you are actually seeing the correct results. This 106 is actually the sum of all the rows where product key equals 1. Now what calculate is actually doing? Calculate is actually taking that row context and then converting it into an equivalent of filter context, and that filter context is actually able to propagate through the table relationship. If I do not use any calculate, it is not able to propagate through the table relationships, and that was the reason it was not giving me correct value. If I and let me explain you in a more detail. If I filter this product key 1, let me add here another slicer of the product key from my products table. Where is my, okay, no problem, I will use the product key from here and I will convert it to a list. If I slice it, let me clear these slicers, and if I slice it with with 1, yes, so where the product key is equals 1, I am getting the total value of 106,588, and the same value you are able to observe here, 106,588. So what it is doing, it is actually taking this 1 from this single row, it is moving towards the sales data and then filtering all the rows where the product key equals 1, and then adding all the rows, summing up all the resulting rows. So that is the explanation of the context transition. It actually in the row context, when you create a calculated column, you actually use the calculate function to actually transition that particular context from the row context to a filter context. Okay, so that was all about the context, the evaluation context. Thanks for watching this video and take care.